All right. Sorry about the delay there, everyone. Initially was planning on starting this stream around 3 p.m., but had some stuff come up and it held me up here. So I'm getting started a little bit later than I planned on, but got a few topics to go over today. So I'm not going to try to take too much time on each one of them. Just give my brief thoughts, and then we'll take the chats from the viewers here. I already see I've got Anthony Reyes. Yo, how you doing today, Anthony? Um, so of course, the two main things I'm going to focus on before I interact with the viewers here are the recent Jackson Hinkle versus Vosh debate. I was requested to give some commentary on this by a couple of people. Well, what are my thoughts? I guess just because I broke down the whole TYT, Jimmy Dore, and Kyle Kalinske thing. So I guess they want to know where I stand on this. Um, and then, of course, the next topic is this has been making the rounds, whether you're watching, mainstream media, whether you're watching YouTube news, and it doesn't matter if you're watching right, left, or independent. Pretty much everybody's starting to talk about this whole Cuban thing. So that's going to be the second focal point. So just go ahead and hop right into this whole Jackson Hinkle versus Vosh thing. Uh, I'll go ahead and be just upfront. I'm not so sure that I really have a dog in this fight either way. I would say if I had to pick one over the other, who would I probably like the most? Would probably be Jackson Hinkle, just because I really don't watch much of Vosh's stuff, and what I've watched, I've said in the past, is content just does not appeal to me. I think he's a pretty much a shill for the Democrat Party. I think he shills for Joe Biden, and I really don't find anything intellectually, consistent or honest about the guy. So I'm really no Vosh fan in the first place, and of course, I've heard the stuff which people like Kyle Kalinske says was taken out of context about the whole kitty type stuff, where his comments on kids and certain films involving kids. Um, and I really don't see how you take that out of context per se, but that's what some people try to defend Vosh with. Now, Jackson Hinkle, on the other hand, I'm well aware that as far as left wing circles are concerned, Jackson Hinkle is pretty, a lot more on the popular side, obviously, than Vosh. Jackson Hinkle, he interacts with Jimmy Dore a pretty good bit. But I'll be honest, one of my first experiences really seeing Jackson Hinkle is probably what put a sour taste in my mouth. One of the first times I really ever saw Jackson Hinkle was when he went on Frank Analysis. And I got to be honest with you, I thought he was rather disrespectful to the rest of the guests on that show. They were arguing for basically you're not going to be able to vote your way out of the problem. So I think the topic was like electoral politics versus activism or something like that. And I don't remember everyone who was on with Franco, but I remember one of the people who were there were Ali Alexandra, and I don't remember who the other person was. It might have been a Gloria. I don't know. It might have been Glory, but whoever it was, they were advocating for more activism. And honestly, obviously Jackson Hinkle's trying to get involved with MPP. I've given my thoughts on MPP quite a few times on this channel. I think they're, a two-wheel drive car basically stuck in the mud going nowhere, honestly. At least as far as things go right now. And for the people who say, well, get involved with it and change it, so you weren't paying attention to all those MPP petitioners who tried to do just that and got ran right out of the party, basically. There's no reforming something that already has a monarch sitting at the top of it, which is Nick Brana. If it's already starting off that way, that's a serious red flag. But Jackson Hinkle's pretty well involved in that camp. So when they started debating and going back and forth, this is what kind of put a sour taste in my mouth. Was I saw Jackson Hinkle basically just clam up and just have a petty, shitty attitude, in my opinion, for the rest of that live stream. He wasn't paying attention to the rest of what people were saying. It looked like he was getting all over his phone, just ignoring them. He's like yawning, basically like he's bored out of his skull. and doesn't want to be there. And then as soon as it's all over, he goes to Twitter and starts taking pot shots at Frank Analysis, like how he was treated so wrong as a guest on a show, et cetera, et cetera. So I saw that and I was like, really, dude? Like at this point, it just seemed like he wasn't open to a conversation with people who disagreed with him. Maybe he is on other issues, but when it comes to the party platform, I think he might be positioning himself to possibly run on. He doesn't want to hear anything of it. So, as I said, I don't really have that much of a dog in this fight. But from what I heard, obviously, I think Jackson Hinkle did a far better job than Vosh. I think he definitely, as we say, put the boots to Vosh. Okay. and I'm not going to necessarily say that's such a hard thing to do when your competition is only trying to, focus a conversation to go one way and one way only. They want to dominate the entire thing. They don't want to let you make valid points, and they're trying to just repeat everything basically the mainstream media says. So Vosh, I don't think that was necessarily the hardest job in the world to do. But the problem with trying to really debate a guy like Vosh is I think Vosh has more in common with Donald Trump than he realizes. As in every time, if you think about it, regardless of what you thought about Donald Trump, every single time Donald Trump would have someone trying to push back at him and make a counter argument, he would try to command the debate stage and cut the other person off. No, not true, fake news. No. More energy tonight, Jeb. I see that. That's good. More, little more energy tonight. Type shit, right? Vosh does the same shit. Like, you can't have an honest conversation with a debate bro or whatever when they don't let you make points. And it's like Vosh. So here's another thing. I saw this with Nico House too. Vosh not only doesn't want to let people make points, Vosh instead tries to tell you what kind of points you're allowed to make. So for example, he put I think Nico House on mute during one of their debates. And when he got ready to unmute Nico House, while he was still on mute, instructed him, now this is what you're going to do when I unmute you. You've got one of two choices. You're going to define this or you're going to say this. That's what you're going to do when I unmute you. That's not a debate. See, and that's another reason why I've told a lot of people in the past, like there was a guy who swore up and down he wanted to debate me. A guy who's deleted his YouTube channel and started back over and is doing absolutely wonderfully. A guy named Alan Collins. I'm not even going to humor him and mention his YouTube channel just because he doesn't deserve any views anyway. But this guy came around for a while and was taking shots at me and Frank Analysis and Nico House. Okay. And I see Anthony Reyes, Dave. No, there's some stuff going on with Dave lately, but me and Dave are still cool. Me and him get along, but there's definitely some stuff going on between the libertarian camp and Dave lately. So, but back to what I was saying, he tried to do the same thing. And then he basically said he wanted to have a debate with me, Alan Collins. He said, I want to have a debate. So I said, okay. Here's a list of topics that we're going to debate, like if you're fine with them. He wouldn't agree to 5 topics to debate on. He wanted to only debate on one topic, and he picked potentially the weakest topic in the entire argument, which was like making third parties successful. And the list of stuff I gave, just going off the top of my head, was something along the lines of third parties, Medicare for all, I think criminal justice reform might have been one. Either way, I gave him a few good topics, bro. Police reform, I think, was one. Went down a list. And the only thing he wanted to debate on was third party stuff. This coming from a guy who doesn't like Democrats and Republicans, and he claims he doesn't either. And you want to debate me on something we probably have the most in common on? But he also refused to have anyone else moderate said debate. I had to debate him on his own channel. Now, I've brought people on my channel, like when I did the whole Jimmy Dore reaction, I brought on Ali and Mona and Sebs. Technically, they debated me. But if that tells you the difference, see, normally if you invite someone on your own channel to debate you, it's on your own turf. So you kind of have home field advantage, right? Like in Vaush's case, oh, I'll mute your mic. I won't allow you to talk. There's too much stuff going on in your favor, in my opinion. Is that really a debate? It's more like a harassing interview. So, like in my case, if I'm going to bring some people on the debate and it's going to be on my own show, and I'm confident enough in my argument, and I'm actually willing to exchange ideas and possibly have my mind changed, I'll actually, just to show that good faith, stack the deck against me if it's going to be on my own show. That's why I didn't just bring on one person. And you'll find during that conversation, I didn't mute anyone's mic. And I brought on 3 people who disagreed with me. That's the difference. So I'm skeptical of anyone who only wants to debate on their own show where they have complete control of the conversation. That is a pretty bitchy tactic, in my opinion. Also seems like you're really not that confident in your own stances. So you've got to be in an environment to have the debate where you control the narrative, you control the conversation, and you, through the use of your technology tools here, can control who talks and who doesn't. That's not debate. That's you living through Donald Trump's debate model. That's not good conversation. That's not debate. And it certainly is not informing anyone. And so just on the facts alone, you got Vosh saying like, I'll send you a video. I'll send you a video. I'll send you a video. And then finally, I heard Jackson Hinkle like, yeah, send me a video. Oh, you actually want the video? Well, no, dumb fuck. You've been telling him you're going to send him the video for like 5 minutes. Why the fuck wouldn't he want the video? Like, you're claiming you have proof of A, B, and C, and you've got a video you can show him to back up your case. Now, if I'm having a debate and I'm honestly willing to listen to your argument, possibly have my mind changed, and you're telling me you've got evidence, you've got proof, and you've got a video making your argument, solidifying your case, why the fuck wouldn't I want to see that video? That's fucking stupid. Like, why would you not? So I heard that and I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, what the fuck is this pitiful shit? And then, of course, it wasn't very long after that he, as people are saying, he rage quit. And then he's like, if you're not even going to engage in the conversation, like, I'm just think we need to end this here. And anytime Jackson Hinkle would try to respond, like, oh, you're clearly not engaged, and I'm just going to end this here, like, motherfucker, dude. That's fucking pitiful, man. Like, I think Vosh needs to look in a mirror and reflect on just how much he has in common with a big orange boogeyman he hates. Because y'all have the same childlike attitude about throwing these fucking man baby temper tantrums when something doesn't go your way. Trump did it on the first debate with Joe Biden, and it turned a lot of people off. Trump did it in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, and it turned a lot of people off. Trump has done it on reporters when he didn't like the questions they were slinging at him. And Vosh, you're doing it on anyone that you will have debates with, but when they start making points that you don't like, I don't even know if you can counter them or not. You don't try. You just try to shut up the conversation. You try to dominate the field and win through flexing your muscle, not presenting facts for your case. Just like Donald Trump. I'm going to beat this debate by trying to tower over the other person and emasculate the fucking hell out of them and not let them talk and interrupt the shit out of them like this alpha male, I'm the one that's going to talk. You fucking can talk when I tell you you can talk type shit. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Vosh, but for being a debate bro, you fucking suck balls, son. You suck. If that's your debate style, you're garbage. See, an actual debate that people might fucking give a shit about are two people sitting down, actually exchanging ideas, having a conversation. And when the argument from the other side starts going in a direction that you don't like, you just, oh, no, you're not engaging. I'm just going to have to stop it right now. We're going to have to pull the plug. Oh, man, that's fucking, I'm just going to call a spade at this point. You're being a pussy, dude. You're being a pussy. Flat out. I don't really like using that word. I'm kind of old school about using that word because where I come from, you don't say that in the presence of other women, you know, and I might have some ladies watching the show right now. So if there's any ladies watching the show, forgive me. I know I curse like a sailor all the time, but that's not exactly a word I like to say very often. Flat out, what you did in that video, you were a big old fat kitty cat, son. And that ain't fat shaming. Just saying you was basically a big old pussy. Period. Period. I see Anthony Reyes, infrared exposed Vosh, showed him how much he has in common with Nazis. Yeah, and which, look, ironically enough, he tried to compare talking to Jackson Hinkle to trying to talk to neo-Nazis. Weak, dude. Weak. Like, I could compare talking to you, even though I haven't talked to you yet. I can see how you interact with other people, and I could compare talking to that with some old people that I know back from the Mill Hills who didn't get that much of an education, and they're just the old raised and born in the country rednecks that really didn't go through school very far. And hey, it might not be any fault of their own. I've talked about that on my channel in the past. Where I come from, back in those days, sometimes kids had to drop out of school at a very young age and wound up going to work to help support the family. It was just a way of life here in the South. But I've met some of those people, and granted, their lack of continuing education might not be any fault per se of their own in the older generation, but they believe that because they've lived for so long and have years of worldly experience, that means they pretty much know it all. Like when you, and don't get me wrong, life will teach you a lot of valuable lessons. But when you start telling them things that they don't agree with, I think it comes down to the fact they know that they didn't go but so far in school. And so when you start presenting things that they have no understanding of, it's almost like you're emasculating their intellect. It's like you're just completely showing them how dumb they are, even though that might not be your intention. They're taking it like you're making me look like a complete stupid idiot right now because I have no idea what you're talking about. And then they get mad and they get not physically violent, even though some have, but mostly they get verbally violent with you, and they'll just start calling you all kinds of fucking names and cussing you out, et cetera, et cetera. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're just a fucking dumbass. You're just a fucking dumbass. I've heard that shit a lot. And honestly, dude, you sound like that. You sound like that. When the conversation goes a direction you don't like, you just show your ever-loving fucking ass. Okay? So that's pretty much my take on this whole thing. I think that Jackson Hinkle definitely had the facts more on his side. Vosh did what Vosh typically does best. So that's pretty much where I stand on this. I'm going to read off some of the chats real quick, and then we're going to move on to the whole Cuban thing. Anthony Reyes, good Charles, glad to be here. We're glad to have you on the show. Now we're trying to do these at least once a week. Jesse Dominguez, I'm a Jackson Hinkle fan. Glad to see him take Vosh down. Yeah, I mean, it was pleasurable to watch Vosh get taken down, but yeah, like I said at the beginning of the video, maybe Hinkle can win me over one of these days. But right now, I just got a bad first impression, I guess, with the guy. So only time's gonna tell on that. Anthony Reyes, glory is glorious. LOL. Saying that. Anthony Reyes, I've been hard on Hinkle, but I also have to realize he's still a kid. I hope he can be a vessel for positive change. So I got to be honest with you. That whole he's a kid thing, I don't think many people realize, but me and him are virtually right at the same age. I'm only 25. And not many people realize that just because beard, deep voice, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, yeah, I guess maturity can hit different people at different times, but there's really not that much of an age gap between me and him. So yeah, I mean, maybe things can change with him over time, but we'll see. Let's see. Jesse, what kind of debate restrictions is that? Might as well limit your argument points as well. I'm not sure if you were referring to what Vosh did to Nico House or what that Alan Collins guy wanted to do with me. But yeah, either way, it's not a debate. It's just insecure person trying to quote unquote have a faux debate and dominate the conversation. Anthony Reyes, it's hard to be sympathetic for Vosh when he is the biggest sleazeball around. Well, I don't know if he's the biggest sleazeball around because there's a lot of sleazeballs out there, but he's definitely a big one. There's no doubt about that. So, all right, Jesse, good point about not informing anyone. Debates for whining are pointless just for entertainment. Discussions from opposing views for seeking knowledge is much more valuable. Absolutely. And if I want to have a debate, that's what I prefer on the channel. Shadow ban refugee cheeseburgers. You got the munchies or something? Anthony Reyes, you look 30. Blaster master, I don't believe at all that you are 25. No one ever does until they see my driver's license or see what I looked like only a few years ago in high school when I had no beard, weighed a little bit less, and had long hair, which I don't anymore. my wife hated when I cut my long hair off because when I was in high school, I actually had that whole kind of skateboard type thing going on. I had the long hair and I had the bangs that came across to the front. If I wasn't just straight live streaming this was an edited video and I was talking about this, I could probably just put a picture up and show you. Anthony Reyes, is it true that you're 6'4"? Yes, with boots on 6'5". and that's without cowboy hat, by the way. But yeah, I'm a pretty tall dude. Most people when they see me don't guess my age. They can guess my height because I'm very clearly a tall guy if you ever meet me in person. But they don't guess my age and they don't guess my weight. My obviously age wise, I usually get somewhere in the 30s. I have been guessed because they couldn't figure it out. They're like, well, what are you in your 40s? Funny enough, I'll tell you for a quick story while we're on this topic before we move on. Me and the wife go bowling every now and then with my mother-in-law. She's on a bowling league and we'll go with her sometimes. And there's a bar in the bowling alley. And me and my mother-in-law went up to the bar. I ordered beer. She ordered a beer. Now, the bartender at this bar has the hots for my mother-in-law. She ain't got nothing for him. If you're not tall, she don't want nothing to do with you. If you're below 6 foot, nope, not her cup of tea. You got to be at least over 6 feet tall. You also can't smoke. If you smoke, automatically out. Well, this guy is like 5'5" and smokes. She's got nothing for him, but he's got the hots for her, man. He's been after her for quite a while. And every time he sees her talking to somebody, you can like turn around and he'll be over there just trying to keep an eye out, like, what you doing talking to my woman type thing, right? So he sees me go up there, we get a beer together, and then I turn around, this motherfucker's watching my ass now. I'm like, no, surely not. Surely not. And then when she goes back to get another beer, he's like, is that your boyfriend over there? It's like, no, that's my daughter's husband. And here's the thing. My mother-in-law, if she ever watches this, is going to kill my ass for revealing her age. She's over 50. Now she's not nearly 60, but she's low 50s, but still she was like 50 at the time. So seeing that, I've been guessed anywhere from 30s all the way up to in my 40s, possibly dating women in their 50s. I get that shit all the time, but right hand to God, I am 25 years old, just turned 25 April 30th this year. Anthony Reyes, what did you play in high school? Linebacker, defensive end? Um, I didn't play football in high school. I played football, just backyard football from time to time when I was younger. But I did two things when I was in school. I outside of school did Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and then during middle school, I did some wrestling team stuff. During my high school years, I had to ride the bus home. And so my parents didn't really get home till later in the evening and stuff. And for the distance the high school was from my house, living on a budget, they didn't really have a lot of gas money for driving that far. And so I wasn't able to really participate in a lot of high school sports. But I will be honest with you, if I had have been able to participate in any kind of high school sports, I don't know that if I would have done the football team just because I played it, but my big passion was wrestling. I'll be honest with you. I love doing the amateur wrestling. And I got into that just because I've said this before. I would have I was a big professional wrestling fan as a kid, and evidence of that, I've got the Undertaker right behind me here on my wall. If none of you have ever figured out what this is right here, so still watch it a little bit today, but not like I used to. Shadowban refugee, you're only 25. This is the age I really start to feel old because the people I watch on BoobTube are younger than me. Well, don't feel bad because no one thinks I'm 25, so we can go with that assumption. The funny thing enough, too, I'll tell you another funny thing here. So I'll have to make a video showing these pictures one day. But my wife, when we got our engagement photos done, I did not have a full beard. I had a little bit of mustache and a little bit of goatee right here, right? And if you ever see me without the hat on, I always have my hair slicked back. Now, I've got it real short on the sides right now. It's just pretty much length on top and it's slicked back. But when I have my hair kind of grown out, when I couldn't keep my hair long anymore, I tried a couple different styles and I wound up just going with the pomade slicking it back. I thought it fit me the best. So I've been doing that for a few years and I have pretty dark hair. And some of these engagement photos were black and white photos. And my wife, or at the time fiance, goes to work to show the engagement photos off. And a lot of her coworkers, they've heard of me. They never met me. I never came to her job. So they just heard of me, right? And then I guess never really looked at many pictures or whatever. So she's showing these engagement photos off. And someone goes over to her that works with her. Some girl, she's like, I didn't know you were engaged to a Mexican. Neither did I. So my wife hates it. We went to a restaurant here one time and I had my cowboy hat on and didn't have the full beard. And literally I got a cowboy hat on. We go to Papa's and Beer and the waiter comes over to the table and just starts speaking to me in Spanish. And I had to tell him like, no Espanol. So I get confused for a lot of different things. Obviously, listening to me, you obviously can tell I'm very white, very redneck. But for people who I guess have never interacted with me, they don't really. Anthony Reyes, you ever see a 6'4" Mexican? I could think of only one example, and he's taller than 6'4". But it's that old professional wrestler, the giant Gonzalez. I don't remember what he was known as in like WCW, but he was like this massive massive guy in the WWF. He was like nearly 8 feet tall or some shit, but that's the only guy that could come to my mind. So that being said, let's move on to this whole thing with Cuba now. So I'll be honest. I want the viewers to kind of chime in on some of this and give me what you think, just because I've heard these different arguments, and I'm hearing what kind of seems like pretty valid points in the rest of, on this debate on both sides. I think I'm hearing stuff that makes sense to me on both sides of the argument. So I want you guys, as I'm going along, to chime in. I'll be reading some of the comments, and we'll see what we come out with here. But just to lay the groundwork. So there's been protests in Cuba recently. The initial story says that it is about vaccine shortages and food shortages and things of that nature. And then you start getting some folks who turn that into, it's really a protest for freedom because they're tired of living under communist regime, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Well, let's just be honest. I've heard mixed things about the Cuban government, and I don't study Cuba religiously. I'm one of these old blue collar guys. So more or less what my primary focus is always on is what's going on with my own country. What I do know about my own country in Cuba is that we have embargoed Cuba. We will not trade with Cuba. We slap sanctions all over Cuba. So that's what I do know. And I do know that stuff can really hurt a country. And for those who are arguing, well, we did because they're brutal communist dictators over there. China was communist. China, even though some are going to argue this, I would still say is communist. They have the Communist Party of China or whatever, right? People are going to argue that, I know. But point being is, there's a lot of other countries we trade with who don't really have the best track record for their human rights. Might not be communist, but Saudi Arabia, anybody? What do? What are they doing? I mean, honestly, that's that's what I got to say to that is this whole argument. We need to be trying to strangle the life out of them because they're communist and it's a dictator in charge. We deal with how many other countries who do this, who don't have the best track record for treating their people right. The reason we don't trade with Cuba, let's just go ahead and get the elephant out of the room, is because before Fidel Castro took over, there was a guy in charge, and this is so much I do know from history, okay? I was a history guy. There was a guy in charge named Batista. Now, Batista was very favorable to the American interests. He allowed the mafia to get their hands into Cuba, and they were basically running it like the island version of Las Vegas. There was gambling, there was shows. It was like a touristy type attraction being ran by organized crime, which had their ties with American business. And they were being allowed to do this because Batista was being favorable to the U.S. corporations and the mafia, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was basically allowing outside foreign interests to take advantage of another country and their resources and their people for the benefit of that other country. So Fidel Castro comes along, he leads a revolution, and he finally, he wins the war, but that pisses off a lot of American special interests. They're not, none too happy about it at all. And eventually we try some shit like the Bay of Pigs, falls flat. Kennedy decides I'm not going to pursue it. And, there's even reports of Kennedy tried to keep working things out with Castro. But after JFK's assassination, I think there was a diplomat actually in Cuba trying to meet with Castro at the time. And there was a report that said something along the lines of when Fidel heard that Kennedy had been assassinated, he said, well, you can forget your peace treaties now because it ain't going to happen. In other words, basically, like, he knew that if Kennedy was out of the way, they're not going to want to work favorably and try to make this a peaceful deal. So, and that's where we've been. I will say this, in my personal opinion, one of the best things that President Obama did was when he lifted those sanctions and tried to normalize trade with Cuba. Honestly, I hear a lot of people on the right or the libertarian side who would cheer if the Castro regime fell and capitalism found its way into Cuba or whatever. But I say this, it shouldn't be our affair. If they want the freedom, let them start fighting for it. If that's how they feel and they feel they're being that oppressed by a Cuban government, let them fight and take their country back for themselves. But I'm starting to hear a lot of people now trying to make the argument that they want freedom. And one of the big outlets that's pushing that narrative, surprising, say that facetiously, Fox News. Now, I don't know if you've been listening to these Fox News clips, but be honest with you, they're beating a war drum. They're beating a war drum here. You've got all these voices coming out who are calling for the U.S. to get involved and help. Iraq, anyone? Really? Operation Iraqi Freedom? Anyone? Deja vu? Anyone? Does this shit not sound the same? We're withdrawing from Afghanistan to go back and finish unfinished business from the 1960s? A conflict and a war that we kind of, in a way, put to the side 60 fucking years ago. Not completely, because we kept trying to choke the shit out of them strategically through finance. But now, it's like the war machine, like Joe Biden, I guess, realized that the public, even though the mainstream media doesn't fucking want it to happen, the mainstream media is pushing this, but the public wants out of Afghanistan. It's been 20 fucking years. 20 years. They're tired. Of course, the powers that be want to stay just because there's so much shit to gain in Afghanistan. They're fucking minerals, lithium. That's what it really is all about. It's about the money. So that's why they don't want to leave Afghanistan. I like how they talk about, I heard Fox News when they were arguing why we shouldn't leave Afghanistan. They said, well, most of the heroin that winds up in Europe comes from the poppy growers in Afghanistan, and they got fields of poppy all over the place. Yeah, about that. Do some research. When the Taliban first started trying to take control of Afghanistan, they're the ones that put the poppy growers out of business, started to dry up the international banks, started to cause a recession. Shortly after that recession started happening, because all that laundered money was drying up due to the instant shock to the heroin trade, because they put the poppy growers out of business. Shortly after that recession started is when the United States got involved in Afghanistan. And no sooner did we get there and start to push back, all of a sudden, those poppy growers were put right back in business. That ain't fishy to anybody. But this is what Fox News does. They beat the war drum. And so the military-industrial complex says we got to have conflict. We got to have war. Biden's trying to do something to poll popular with the public here, pull out of Afghanistan. Well, we need another option. How about Cuba? It's right off the coast of Florida. Why not? So now they're already trying to set up the gears to potentially convince the public how brutal Fidel, or not Fidel, because I think Fidel's dead now, but Raul Castro is, or the regime in that country. And now the United States is needed to come in and take it down to liberate the Cubans. So that's what I'm getting from this. Now, on the other side, I've also heard some folks who basically advocate for how great Cuba is. Before I get to that, I want to read. I haven't read this entire comment, so I'm going to just see what we've got here. Sleepy 22. I've been to Cuba, wanted to see how it looks and effects of sanctions, and ordinary folks are really poor. They lack everything. However, part of the blame is also on their corrupt autocratic government. Uh so yeah, that brings me to this point. I like Nico House. I like Frank Analysis. I've never been on Nico's show. I've been on Frank Analysis a lot. But I was listening to Nico House's coverage of this whole thing with Cuba, and he had Franco on his show. And but I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know that I agreed with what I were hearing those guys saying on that stream. Now, I've never been to Cuba, so you can chalk this up to me talking out my ass if you want. But my thing is, I hear good stuff that comes out of Cuba, obviously, like the literacy program or whatever. They know how to read very well. They've been able to make things work for the most part. And then I hear the argument, and this is typically what the left has been talking about, how crippled the government is because of the sanctions and the python-like chokehold that has been applied to them by the United States government to try and disrupt their government, to try and disrupt their society, cause problems, and cause their collapse. Now, I hear a lot of the left saying that. I hear some libertarians saying that. But then I also hear Nico say how great Cuba's been doing with this advancement in medicine and how they're giving it to all the citizens there and supplying it out to the rest of the world. So basically, what I was taking away from Nico's point was Cuba is being choked out, and that's why people are suffering, yet somehow they're really not suffering, and they're doing way more than they should be capable of, and their people are still getting taken care of, and they're getting the medicine that they need, and there's actually so much of it that they're giving it to other countries. Now, how the fuck is that actually possible? I'm not saying that Nico was lying. I'm not saying he was wrong. I'm just saying basically what I heard in that was they have their cake and they eat it too, and you can't do that. It's got to be one or it's got to be the other. So the initial argument was that they're impoverished. They're not getting access to vaccines. They're not getting access to the supplies that they need because they're embargoed and they're sanctioned. Now, I could see some truth to that. Absolutely, I could. I'm fully aware of what the United States has been doing to Cuba. But how can you make that argument on one hand and then talk about how great they're doing with everything, and that they're not just saying they're doing great for their situation, because he did say that, but how great they were doing was basically like they're taking care of all that problem and then giving supplies to other countries. Now, I'm confused. If your people are protesting because they're saying they don't have enough, how are you taking care of it so well that you've got plenty to go around to give to other people? So that in this equation, 2 plus 2 is coming out to 5, and something don't add up here. That's all that I'm saying. And so that's why I wanted some people to chime in on this and give me what your thoughts are, just because I'm hearing the both sides. Now, to be fair, the right does kind of have, I guess, a point on something here. And that argument was they're not actually protesting. This is what they say. They're really protesting for freedom. And they don't want to live under the communist regime anymore. That if they're really out there protesting for a vaccine, why would they be doing it in the manner that they are, which, as mainstream media called, basically super spreader events? They're all stacked on top of each other in the streets, protesting shoulder to shoulder. Definitely ain't no 6-foot spacing going on here. Now, to be fair, I will be honest. I mean, how do you want them to protest? I mean, a protest is a protest. So I get where they're coming from, that it doesn't really make much sense for them to be protesting that way if they really want a COVID vaccine, because you could be easily spreading the shit out of COVID right now. So I see where that's coming from. But that's, that's my big takeaway. So I'm not really sure. I know Kyle Kalinske isn't a very popular guy right now, but I watched his video on it. I kind of have to say I like his take. Why don't we just remove these sanctions and let Cuba do their thing first? And then let's see what the people still say after that's done, after we're not financially trying to choke them out. Because then if people are still hitting the streets in masses, well, clearly it might not just be about sanctions anymore, right? So read a couple of the comments off here. Les Albro, Operation Cuban Freedom. I'm sure our wonderful leaders are working on it. Oh, you can believe that. Anthony Reyes, we can't know the truth because it's advantageous for both sides to keep it murky. I would agree with that. Sleepery22, I had an argument with Fiorella yesterday, who's one of those types who's glorifying everything about Cuba, though she's never been there. They really desperately need some internal reforms. Yeah, I would agree with that too. I'm actually going to elaborate back on this whole like Cuba thing and tie it back into actual what the serious stuff is, because there's actually some stuff I forgot when I was talking about the Hinkle and Vosh debate there that I've also heard some of on the MCSC network, some comments made. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. I'm glad you brought that up. Josh, are you seeing what's been happening in South Africa? It's way scarier than Cuba. I haven't actually seen very much of what's going on. If someone's got some information on that, shoot me something over on Twitter there and get it over to me. I don't get to follow as much global politics as much, just between working my normal job, and I try to keep up with a lot of stuff just going on here. But yeah, shoot something over my way. I'd be interested to check that out. Anthony Reyes, it's not a consistent, Charles, and some people don't like us asking questions. Nothing wrong with wanting more information because it's inconclusive. Sleepery Fi is not the brightest. So full disclosure, I mean, I've never really interacted with Fiorella. So I don't want to say nothing really bad about the lady. From what I've seen, she seems like a bright woman to me. But and I haven't actually seen what they've been saying on this. I just saw Nico House's clip. But I will say, tying back into what I said I was going to come back to, I hear this glorification of Cuba and something else. I heard good buddy of mine. So no disrespect here, Franco, but got to keep it real with you, brother. Okay. I heard the pushback to Jackson Hinkle was because he used the term that Assad was a brutal dictator. And then they immediately go to, oh, they're repeating State Department talking points. So it's manufacturing consent. Blah, 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 blah. Slow down. Slow down. Not everything's always black and white here, okay? I think that's important. I think there are some people who have gotten to the point that they don't trust the American government so much that anything that comes out of their mouth at this point, they're going to believe the opposite. I'm not saying that's the case for Franco. I think Franco is a little more nuanced. But I definitely see this from some factions on the left. And they're right. And hey, let me be clear. I can understand why. The government lies to people all the fucking time. But just because the government said it doesn't always mean that it's a lie. Now, in the case of like the gas attacks, there's been plenty of evidence that's come forward to show that might not be Assad. Probably isn't. Okay. So that being said, obviously the government's probably lying because they're wanting to beat that war drum. But does that mean that Assad is a great guy? No, that's not what that means. Like, to put this in context for you, Saddam Hussein was not a great guy. Gaddafi was not a great guy. They were not. They simply were not good people. But we still wanted to go to war with them Not just because they were bad people, but because we had something to gain out of it. So to conflate that, well, because the U.S. war machine wants to go to war with them, they must be good people. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Now, one thing I heard brought up was that how great their election systems are. So apparently Syria, Assad got what, like 90% of the vote? 90% of the vote, right? And apparently like 68% of the voters who could vote came out. And of those voters, I'm thinking it was 68. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong here, but of those voters who came out, he won like 90% of the vote. So a little over half of the country, close to 75% of the country, came out to vote. And of those people that voted, you're saying that 90% voted in favor of Assad. Okay. Now, they immediately turn to, well, the State Department says that you can't trust those numbers and that it's not honest, but there's been no evidence presented to prove that statement. So then it must be a complete 100% thorough election without any corruption, any problems, et cetera, et cetera. Except when we just had our own elections. Our election system said that Joe Biden got more fucking votes than any other president who's ever run for office. The motherfucker who can't put sentences together, the motherfucker who sniffs babies, sucks fingers, and fondles women, and can't get solid thoughts together. He got more fucking votes than anyone else in history. And mainstream media tried to say that the evidence that was being presented from Trump and, oh, it's not real evidence and it's this and it's that and it's circumstantial and no court would take it up. So to be fair, if we're going to go by that same standard, no court really humored the argument. Don't even talk about Arizona. Trust me, I'm not in the camp that believes Joe Biden is the most popular guy to ever run. Even if you throw that people just didn't like Trump and held their nose and voted for him. I'm not buying that. I'm just not buying it and still don't. But that's what they said. And the mainstream media said there's no evidence to prove that it isn't true, regardless of what surfaced. The courts said the evidence isn't sufficient and we're not going to take it up. The Supreme Court would not hear it. And yet I do remember these same people from the MCSC network at the time saying about all the problems with the American election system. What happened, guys? I thought there was no evidence, though. Everything we got right here says there's no evidence. They said that he won the popular vote by a pretty fair margin. We got two new blue senators in a traditionally red state. Looks like the evidence lines up for old Joe here, but they didn't buy that argument when it was the American election. No, when it was the American election, regardless of what evidence is out there, they did their own digging. They uncovered this and that. And then they said, like, well, look how corrupt the American elections is. Yet a country way over in the Middle East, obviously known for having turmoil for fucking centuries. That place has been in wars amongst each other, culturally and whatnot, for fucking centuries. And let's just be honest, there are things we can confirm Assad has done that don't make him a fucking saint. But yet, oh, well, there's no good evidence been presented, so we got to take them at their word for it. I just think that is a pretty double standard there. You're going to take the word of that government because you've got what they said. Like, okay, let me put it to you this way. They're supposed to have elections in North Korea too. How well does that shit fucking play out for them every year? So that's the thing. So that's just my whole point is, you know, I don't like the idea that even though I agree there were shenanigans with our own election, you're going to look into it and take that for its word at face value, in spite of what mainstream media says. But then some other country, oh no, their election's got to be solid because there's no evidence, according to what they're reporting, there's no evidence of interference. You think they're gonna report that shit? I mean, that's my take. And so I look at that as the same damn thing with Cuba at this point. Okay, you've got people who are really propping this whole thing up, and talking about how great Cuba is and how wonderful Cuba's handled every damn thing under the sun. And I've just got to be honest with you. I've just got to be honest with you. I'm not really sure what the problem here is, or why they feel the need to go out of their way to fluff these countries up. I don't know if it's just because, again, they're to that point. If the State Department says A, I got to believe B. I don't know if it's that, or if it's just the fact they lean so far onto the left-wing spectrum, they feel like it's their due diligence to defend socialism or communism at every step possible. Because I do know people who do that shit too, and I don't think that that's very honest. Like, look, I'm not a person who demonizes the shit out of capitalism, but I'll criticize it where I find the faults, and then I'll give credit where I think the credit is also due. I'll do that same shit with communism and socialism too. I think playing team for your ideology and just going along to get along because it goes with your philosophy, and I don't like that. I don't. I also don't think you're going to build any kind of unity movement moving in that direction either. So, real quick, turn to a few of the chats here. Let's see. I've already missed a few. Let's see. Sleepery 22. I arrived to Havana on day Fidel died. Cops raided every bar and restaurant and kicked everyone out. They have serious censorship, controlled internet, no public discourse. Young people are leaving. Yeah, and I mean, I've heard a lot of that stuff over the years too. I mean, that's why you do have people who try to escape that country and still come to the United States. And I'll tell you another thing too. Compare them to a lot of other immigrants. You will find the Cuban immigrants, from my interactions, they seem to have a different attitude about the United States when they get here than other countries. I'm not sure why. I know what I've heard the reason why is, but they hated living in Cuba, a lot of them, and that's why they came to the United States. And then they sit there like, we're just so fucking thankful to be here. So take from that what you will. Take from that what you will. Okay. Josh, in South Africa, malls are being looted and burned. Supply warehouses, people are arriving by truckload in different areas to cause anarchy. It's spreading fast. I haven't heard about that, but sadly, in today's world, it wouldn't really surprise me. Sleeper 22, I'm more left than any of them. Frank, etc. I don't trust the U.S. government on almost anything, but I make my own judgment. Sanctions hurt them a lot, but it's also very backward and an oppressive system. Yeah, I agree. And this has been one of my big pushbacks to the concept of communism in the past, is that I've told people, I said, I don't see how you're going to institute it without force. Just because the whole premise is we've got to balance the income inequality. We've got to take all the wealth away from the rich and start redistributing that wealth. Okay, what do you do when they don't want to do it? You're going to have pushback. Like if you were to institute this shit tomorrow, how you going to go about it? You think that they're just going to hand it over to you because you say it's the right thing to do? No. It's the same thing on guns. When you tell people turn your guns in, it's the right thing to do. You know what they say? Fuck you and fire a warning shot, probably. You're going to have to do it by force, which is how shit like the gulags came to exist in the first fucking place. These are the people who wouldn't go along for the good of the system. So we have to make you conform because it's better for us as a community. Hence communism. Community. That's one of my biggest pushbacks, this entire thing. That whole system operates on making sure people are team players. You have to be a team player and do what we want. And the problem with that is society tends to turn over their power to people after a period of time. It's been that way for forever. You really don't have a system where every single person in society cares so much about what's going on in politics that they stay focused on it from here till eternity. Sooner or later, they'll get comfortable. They'll delegate people to lead while they go about their everyday lives. Those people then take power. And what does the old saying go? Power corrupts. And then you wind up, that's why you hear about the Soviet Union. Oh, it wasn't supposed to be that way under Stalin. That's not what Lenin wanted. Yeah, but Stalin took over, didn't he? Mao took over, didn't he? The Kim family took over, didn't they? Fidel took over, didn't he? Do you see the fucking pattern here? Power corrupts. You get that power in your hands, you get drunk on it. The rest is history. I mean, it has a pattern at this point. Even our own fucking system has done the same thing. We were supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And you see where we're at today. So that being said, let's see. Anthony Reyes. Charles, here's the problem. Assad doesn't have to be a great guy, but Hinkle said he committed war crimes. He couldn't provide any when asked. And I'll be honest. I mean, I don't study Assad or Syria like clockwork, you know. And so if someone were to ask me right off the top of my head, what is a war crime that Assad has committed? I couldn't point to one right off the top of my head either. And look, I'm going to say this. It's just because I admit I'm a blue collar guy. I focus more on our domestic stuff than a lot of foreign policy stuff. The big thing I care about on foreign policy is getting our troops back home and minding our own fucking business. That's my big principle is that when it comes to foreign policy. Stop interfering in other people's fucking business when we got all these problems at home. And we're not taking care of our own problems. Why are we worrying about the rest of the world's? I mean, that's just been, I was raised, people that live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. So we got to fix a lot of problems in our own country. Why are we worrying about somebody else's? So, you know, that the one thing that I will say to that is just, you know, I don't know that Assad is within the class of someone like, you know, a Saddam Hussein or whatever. But what I will say is this. I do believe he probably is playing some shenanigans. And I've seen people say this, Anthony Reyes, and I do think Assad does do some shenanigans with his elections. I wouldn't be surprised in the least. And so I guess what I'm just saying off of that is, just as a hunch, I don't think that it's that great to just assume he has complete innocence because the State Department doesn't like him. I think that's a very narrow-sighted way of looking at that situation. I just think a lot more digging should be done before you just draw up these conclusions. Shadowban refugee. Charles, not fair to say the Middle East has been in turmoil for centuries while omitting the planet has been in turmoil for centuries. Well, to be fair, I mean, yes, the planet, of course, it's always had its war. But I will tell you this. We've always had war. But Columbus, not saying this to defend Columbus. I don't want to hear about how bad Columbus was. It's got nothing to do with him as a person and his moral character here. But I think Jesse Ventura always did a good job of explaining this. As he pointed out, why did Columbus try to set sail to find this new world? Which, first of all, he wasn't trying to find a new world. What was he trying to do? He was trying to find a trade route to India. Keep that in mind. Okay. Now, depending on who you ask, they will tell you Columbus tried to do that because the science at the time said the earth was flat. And that if you sail too far, you will fall off the edge of the earth, the edge of the map, into a sea of like monsters and an abyss and basically a hell. So that's what people believed. And so some people, well, Columbus studied Galilee and this and that, and he didn't believe that, so he had a mission to prove. Okay. And you think that the Spanish royal crown would have just sacrificed, I don't know, a few of their ships and a lot of sailors just to go off on some nutty adventure to prove the earth isn't fucking flat? Really? You think that's why they did it? Financial interests. They traded with India. And there was only one way in 1492 before he made that sale to trade with India. And you want to know what it was? To go through the Middle East to get there. You had to travel on land through the Middle East. And you had to take a boat at some point, but you had to travel through the Middle East to get to India at that time. They wanted to find another trade route. You know why? Because their caravans would get fucking raided. Supplies would get stolen. It was that fucked up in 1492. It was that bad back then. So to put that in context again, I think Ventura has done a great job when he explains this. Columbus would have taken the chance because there was no evidence he wouldn't fall off the face of the fucking earth. Sure, you had philosophers and guys saying, oh, the earth is round and gave their evidence, but no one had ever tried that theory for themselves. Just like when they tried to make an airplane, you got to test this fucking theory at some point and it might go south, might even kill your ass. So he was willing to take the chance on falling off the face of the fucking earth than to go through the Middle East to go to India. Shit was that bad back then. I don't know what you want me to tell you. I know something else that I reference it to, and it gets into the realm of religion a little bit. And some people don't take this seriously, so chalk this up to a grain of salt if you want. But I will say this much. It was in the Bible. Jewish people traced their tribe back to Israel through Abraham. Abraham was the father of many nations. If you study what the Bible says about that scenario, it says that Abraham was supposed to be the father of many nations. He was a very old man. His wife, Sarah, was a very old woman. God came to him and said, you're going to have a baby. Abraham basically said, we're too old and dusty. There's no way we could have kids at this age. Are you crazy? God said, no, you're going to have a kid. The wife, Sarah, she laughed at the idea. God got pissed, said basically, fine, you're not going to have kids. You laughed. You insulted me. So God got pissed. So now they weren't going to have kids. So then Abraham, in a way to try to appease God, decided, well, God wanted me to have a kid and my wife's too old and now he's mad at her. So he took his maid, had a child with his maid, named it Ishmael. But apparently that just pissed God off even more because God says, I didn't tell you you were having a kid with her. I said you were having a kid with your wife, not her. So now to appease God, Abraham banishes the maid and his illegitimate son, Ishmael, out into the wilderness. Then at some point down the line, he does have his son, with Sarah. Okay. He has, I think it was Isaac, right? I might have said Israel earlier, but I think it was Isaac. And so Jewish people trace their heritage back to Abraham through Isaac. And Muslim culture traces their heritage back to Abraham. Guess which son? Ishmael. And it was right there, plain text, that because of what Abraham did with the illegitimate son and all that, he said, as a punishment for what you've done, your sons will fight until the end of time. A few hundred years and we're still going. What do you want me to say? So chalk that up to whatever you want, but I just find that rather ironic that was written a long time ago, and so far history has shown it to be a very true statement up to this point. So again, take that for what you want. So Joe Hickey, read Aaron Matei and OPCW initial reports. It's very clear. Anthony Reyes, his family has always been in power. DJL7, nice to see you here, Ed. OMG, did Hinkle say that Assad is bad? Prepare the troops. Shadowban refugee. Let's see. I just jumped way down the chat here. Let's see. Yeah, Shadowban refugee. However, I don't think Assad is legit. Seems like the biggest issues you're bringing up have a common denominator. The state got to be broken and scattered to the winds. DJL7, I wonder what Kim Kardashian thinks about this topic. Anthony Reyes, it's not about Hinkle, Ed. It's about all indie media. True that, Anthony. Joe Hickey, you say Assad is a war criminal. All we want is evidence. DJL7 there, clueless. Joe Hickey, what has Assad done? You ever talk to Syrians to find out? Let's see. Anthony Reyes, Assad defended his country. That's undeniable. Joe Hickey, I'm not into totalitarianism. Shadowban refugee. I don't have to like Assad either. Hashim al-Assad or Bashar al-Assad, they seem like a constitutional monarchy to me, and I'm really not a fan of the Ba'ath Party. That being said, not my business. Anthony Reyes, same Shadowban. And look, I'm going to agree with that. It's not my country, and that's why I don't follow it that much. I look at it like this. When we wanted to break away from the British, we all know what we had to do. If other countries don't like what's going on, do something about it. It's your country. It's your country. And to be fair, I think if there is real evidence, now this is going to get into real fucking touchy territory because this is what the State Department and the military industrial complex loves to capitalize on. But I would say if there is evidence that there is a country who is just slaughtering their fucking people and that they need help, I'm not extremely opposed to them having help. But I will say this, if that be the fucking case, why does no other country get involved to help? Why is it immediately the U.S. military? So if it's only the U.S. military getting involved, throw your fucking red flag up, something suspicious. Like, you know, we did have world wars at one point. There were countries who were just on fucking rampages like the Nazis. And I don't think you should let that just go unchecked because eventually that problem will show up at your backyard. But you gotta be real fucking careful where you draw that damn line because that is the kind of shit that they love to build false flags around and make you think that it's getting that bad so that you would support going to war. So that gets real fucking tricky to determine. So just as a principle, I'm going to say bring the troops back home. I don't see where that's a problem right now. And I want to see those countries try and take it for themselves first. Funny enough, Kennedy said the same thing shortly before he got shot about going to war in Vietnam. Josh, the far left and far right are quite similar in many ways. Yeah, and they just don't really know how much, huh? Joe Hickey, absolute power corrupts absolutely, which is why the U.S. imperialism has to stop. Yeah, I would agree with that. Anthony Reyes, corruption is not beholden to ideology. And then Joe Hickey, maybe you should study before commenting. So it seems like you're taking a little bit of some shots at me here on this whole Syria thing, Joe. I'm going to be completely honest with you here, okay? I've said on my channel multiple times, I don't like to go too much into subjects that I don't study a shit ton about. And that's why I'm not going to say for sure what the fuck is going on in Syria. I don't know. But I'm not going to just assume, because I don't know, that they have perfect fucking elections either. And I'm clearly not the only one who thinks there's something sus about that. There's been multiple people here coming through the chats who identify themselves as being leftists who are going to say, yeah, I think he's probably got some shenanigans going on in those elections. And what my main focal point is to say that because the State Department says that there's screwy elections, but this evidence or that evidence hasn't shown its head yet. And you're going to say, well, must be completely fair election, must be one of the best elections on the planet, over 90% of the vote. I'm going to say this: if over 90% of the people vote for you, but not 100% of the voters turn, like only 68% of the voters, I think, turned out, right? And you got 90% of that. Why didn't more voters turn out? Like, I would think if you were that fucking popular, why'd only 68% come out to vote for your ass? Furthermore than that, I then got to ask the question, 90%, you're that fucking popular with that war going on, all this shit going on inside of your country, and you're that fucking popular. Like, do you think if we had that kind of shit going on in the United States, Reagan would have won with the fucking sweep he had in the 80s? I don't think so. Now, you can blame it on, well, it's not Assad's fault, it's U.S. imperialism's fault. Okay, but optics mean a fucking lot. And maybe the Syrian, civilians look at their government different than the United States. But I can tell you something right fucking now. The U.S. citizens, if a war zone broke out here next fucking week, it wouldn't fucking matter whose fault it was. They're going to say one thing: our leader did not protect us. And they're going to vote that motherfucker out come next election. And he got 90%. 90%. It just seems a little suspicious to me. And what I'm saying is, for those who would then question our elections, when the mainstream media says there's no evidence of corruption, and I'm not going to criticize them for that. I had my own questions. But you're going to question our elections when the powers that be says there's no evidence of corruption. But then you would take a foreign country when their powers that be says there's no evidence of corruption. Oh, well, it must be telling the truth. I think at that point you're going way, way too far into your belief that the U.S. State Department is a big old fucking liar. So whatever they say, the opposite has to be true. That's just kind of the vibe I'm getting from that mentality. Maybe that's not the case, but that just seems to be what I'm getting from it. And I think sometimes the truth is somewhere really in the middle. And you've just got to try to look into it a little bit more. And I think if you don't do that and you just jump to those conclusions, go, oh, it was a State Department, so it's got to be a fucking lie. I just think you lose a lot of people's confidence in what you're saying at that point. So that's my take. Let's see. Anthony Reyes, my friend has a saying, and it's going to steal it from he says systems are neutral and our problems are people problems. Let's see. Joe Hickey, Nan said the same about glass houses. Yeah. Joe Hickey, it's just as wrong to assume he's a brutal dictator without any evidence. And I'm not going to assume he's a brutal dictator. Like, again, like I said, I don't know that he's in the category as, say, Saddam Hussein or Kim Jong-un or whatever, right? I'm not going to go that far. I don't study enough. Excuse me. I just don't study enough about Bashar al-Assad to make one determination one way or the other. But the same way I would say that I think the Cuban government has its problems, I would say there's probably some in the Syrian government too with Bashar al-Assad. And I don't know that I would trust their elections all the way. I mean, you don't see power turn over in those countries. And the only time you've ever seen some shit like that here, aside from the Senate and Congress, was with FDR. Now, you think that these people are as beloved as FDR was? I don't know about that. I mean, like I said, FDR, the worst thing happened with that shit was like what? Pearl Harbor or whatever? Or was he even alive when Pearl Harbor happened? I don't remember if FDR was still president when Pearl Harbor happened or not. But, I mean, we didn't have that war break out here. Like I said, I just have a hard time believing that if I had bombs dropping on my fucking head and I was leader of a country, I would still be getting 90% of the people to come out and vote for me. It's just suspicious. That's all I'm saying. It's just suspicious. So that being said, Anthony Reyes, you got a nice showing here. 26 people, not bad. No, not for this channel. Shit, we just dropped way down the damn chat here again. Let's see. Thomas, Oklahoma. Assad has issues, but there's no evidence that he is a war criminal. Most Syrian people side with Assad because the U.S. government sanctions and bombs Syria. Syria declared Assad a hero because he resists. And hey, that very well could be true. Perhaps they do look at him as a revolutionary trying to, push back and stand up against an oppressor. I mean, really, I guess that's how Fidel Castro became as popular as he did, to be fair. So, I mean, that's certainly a possibility. That's also a reason why Kim Il-sung became such a hero in North Korea. So it's possible. It's possible. I'm not going to say it's not. Like I said, I just think that there should be some questions asked. And I just don't know that immediately assuming that they got to be telling the truth because the State Department says one thing. I just don't know that's the best logic to use. And that seems to be what a lot of people are doing. Now, if they're not, then I'd love to hear why they come to the conclusions that they get to. But that just seems to be what I gather a lot. So, Propaganda Live. Charles, you sexy old cowboy. Propaganda, I wear a cowboy hat, but I am not a Texas Chippendale. Sorry. Slippery 22. Corrupt bureaucratic oligarchy and socialism that you tried to describe is called a new class or red bourgeoisie, or in derogatory term, red gang, red. Thomas, Oklahoma. The Arabs saved the Roman books and gathered them from East Asia and India and helped create modern science, industrial age. Muslims had their golden age until the West interfered. Yeah. Funny enough, if you actually go back and look at some of the Middle East countries back in like the 50s and the 60s, they were a lot more like we were here. And then like all of a sudden religious fanatics took over and the shit went like 100 years back in time. I actually kind of found out a little bit of that through watching a Joe Rogan podcast episode, and I found it to be pretty interesting. Joe Hickey, I always thought that's why you incorrectly called the natives Indians, or is that just an abbreviation of indigenous? No. They called Native American. That's my whole point. He wanted to find a trade route to Columbus. He wanted to find a trade route to India. When he landed, he thought he was in India. And that's why he called them Indians. That's absolutely how they got that name. Now, of course, they were indigenous, but no. They were Indians and were called Indians because they thought they landed in India. And that's why they started looking for shit like gold. They thought they were in India. They thought they were going to find the kind of shit they went to India to trade for. And instead, they found a few guys with tomahawks, arrows, and corn. But they thought that they were in India. So, yeah. Let's see. Josh, did you know the people living in Israel now are not descendants of the original Israelites? Yeah, I mean, that would surprise me. Dude, I mean, tribes, clans, races, cultures, ethnicities, whatever you want to use. I mean, there's been a lot of crossovers that have happened over time. I mean, bloodlines are much more murky than probably a lot of people want to believe they are. Let's be honest. But culturally, that's what they say. That like the Jews trace theirs back to Abraham, and I know Muslim people do as well, but they go back through the two sons. So that was just the point there. Let's see. Propaganda Live. Hinkle said more than just Assad was bad. The language used towards Assad should be used towards all politicians and leaders. but it's not. So when calling Assad a dictator, it's excluding him and using CIA regime change talking points. And look, I agree. I agree 100%. Criticism should be going to alarm people on the side. For example, we wanted to talk about Russia interfering in some fucking elections and how it's an act of war, yet we do that shit very fucking regularly. So how many countries are we really declaring war on? So yeah, I mean, there's absolutely good point to that too. Again, it's just my point. I'm not saying Assad is Kim Jong-un. I'm just saying the immediately rush to say, well, he's got to be telling the truth because the State Department says this. The State Department absolutely lies their ass off. But I think to jump to the immediate conclusion that, well, if the State Department says it, the opposite has to be true, I just find it short-sighted. I think you should do a little research, and I just don't see in trying to push him up as being, the absolute greatest thing out there right now, like some people try to do, just because the State Department doesn't like him. And they're doing, again, it's not just Assad. They're doing the same shit with the Cuba situation right now too. Some of these guys on the left are. Like I said, and again, not taking shots, trying to say, oh, I don't want anything to do with Frank and House. Just a disagreement that I have. And if Franco ever wanted to talk about it, I'd be more than happy to go on his show and talk about it. Hell, he might change my mind on some shit. I've had my mind changed before. Wouldn't be the first time. I'm just one of those guys. It's not something that I dive that deep into. So if I were to go on his show and then talk about it, I would probably start doing a lot more digging into the subject. Right now, I'm just interacting in the chats here. But it's my personal thing. I just don't see that they are this completely holy, righteous leader in either of those scenarios. And I just don't think that it's good to pump them up and prop them up just because the State Department doesn't like them. Like, no. State Department could be lying their ass off about them. Does that make them a good person? No. Okay. Let's see. Joe Hickey, respecting other countries' sovereignty enforces one's own sovereignty. Yeah. So that being said, I've actually heard some people going back to Cuba. Not going to name any names, but there's been some people who've equivalated that we could, if somebody wanted to get involved, we could take down Cuba and it would be like going over a speed bump. What? For someone who doesn't like war, I find that statement very concerning. Honestly, I do. Again, I'm not going to say any names at the time, and I'm not going to cancel them and have nothing to do with them, but I'm just like, dude, I don't know what you're on, but you're losing me at that point. Like, we should not be sending out our military to go do more of the shit. Like, you're really taking that Iraqi freedom bait, huh? Honestly, that's how I look at that. Josh, watch Richard Medhurst's takes on Syria, seeing as he's Syrian himself and is much more in touch. And great point, Josh. I watch Richard Medhurst from time to time. I don't watch him a lot just because with everything I do, I've only got so much time to consume so much content, and I do watch things other than political stuff from time to time. If you just engulf yourself in politics, you're going to go nuts. So I do have to consume some other things. So I watch him from time to time, and I think that is a very valid point. If he's from Syria, and I'm sure he is, I don't have any reason to believe you're lying about that. So with him being from Syria, I think it's very valuable to get his take. The same way that I would tell a lot of people, don't make judgments about culture from the South. Don't make judgment about Southerners. Take it from a guy who lives in the South like me. I've lived here my whole life. I know how people think here. I know how people act here. And a lot of people who've lived in like California or New York their whole life, and they start to, oh, those Southerners, this is what they think. Like, if you ever lived here, you ever been here? So absolutely. I think if anybody does have that right to say this is what's going on, probably would be somebody who lived there. So I think that's a very good point. And I'll definitely have to check out what he's saying about that. Propaganda Live. Over 1,000 children's bodies have been dug up in Canada as of late. The media narrative towards Canada doesn't explode words like dictatorship. I'm not aware of that going on in Canada. You'll have to send me some information over on what's been going on with that lately. I haven't really heard of that. Joe Hickey. Israel and us were the only two countries to vote for continuing Cuba embargo for the 124th time in 60 years. Well, you fucking know Israel's going to go along with it. We're just up their ass taking care of them. I mean, damn, they're our fucking golden egg laying goose over there in the Middle East. Or I guess we are for them, one or the other. We're making sure that they stay fucking A-OK. We train the shit out of them and make sure they're armed to the fucking teeth. Yeah, I'm sure with the amount of fucking help they're getting from the United States, they better damn well be voting with whatever the United States wants. What the fuck? Like, I'm not excusing it or advocating for it, but could you imagine if the U.S. was kissing their ass that fucking royally and they didn't vote with what the U.S. wanted them to vote on? But like, oh yeah, you're arming us to the teeth so we can blow the fuck out of Palestine over here and we can just, drop bombs all over the fucking place. We'll kick some serious fucking ass with our little ass military over here. Oh yeah, we're fucking ready to go. But fuck what you want us to vote with you on because we don't want to do it. Now that's one hand washes the other guy. We watch your ass, we arm your ass, we make sure you keep your fucking ass and that you can kick other people's ass and you just vote with our ass. That's the moral of this ass lesson here. Let's see. Anthony Reyes. I think it's been made clear to Syrian people that they are better with Assad than without him. And probably very well true there. I think from the evidence that I've seen that there are outside actors who are trying to stage this stuff to look like Assad's doing this to his own people. And common sense just doesn't dictate why he would be trying to do that to his own people when he was winning. Doesn't make much sense, right? So, yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Let's see. Jumped again. Thomas, Oklahoma. If the USA practiced free trade like they love to preach with the world wouldn't be so unequal economically because free trade would benefit all. Imperialist, corporatist policies is the problem. Kind of losing me on that one. I'm going to tell you why. I think you're conflating free trade and sanctions. And maybe you're not, but I'll tell you where I'm at on this. Okay. Sanctions, I can see where that's a problem. Don't do that. The sanctions, I see where that's just being a dick to the poor people in that country. That's really who it hurts. But free trade, here's the problem. Ross Perot did a excellent, just wonderful fucking job on explaining why free trade fucking sucks. The U.S. built up a pretty good standard for the middle class. I know people are going to go toward, well, civil rights this and civil rights that and black people and cops and Hispanic people. Look, go back to the 90s. The dollar went further. The middle class did better. People had a better standard of living. Ask around. I mean, it's just a fucking fact. There were still more small mom and pop shops. The corporations hadn't taken over to such a degree. But what did Ross Perot say about NAFTA? He said, these kind of trade deals, you put us on the same level playing field with like Mexico. What you got to understand is that think what you want about these other countries. They didn't have a lot of those unionized workers' rights and safety protocols and shit like that we had in the United States. They weren't entitled to have certain benefits. They weren't entitled to have certain wages. They weren't entitled to only be allowed to work so many hours a day. They weren't entitled to be given certain safety protocols. There's all kinds of like Why do you think so many of these corporations want to outsource to these countries and then send the shit back to us for us to buy? Because it's cheaper to make it there than it is to make it here and sell it right here. So what you then cause are all these American jobs who are fucking greedy to go, whoo, and then they go to another fucking country, make the shit cheaper, send it back across the border. It's free trade, which means no tariff tax. The tariff tax, the protectionism concept was there to make it so that when that product re-entered the U.S. market, it could not lowball the fuck out of the American-made stuff. You live here, you should probably try to support a lot of your own businesses and what they make here. But this lowball shit, because it could be made so much fucking cheaper, cuts the price by so much, the American consumer says, well, it's the same fucking thing for less price. I'll buy that. And it crushed American business. So many jobs outsourced. Perot said it would fucking happen. And he said it would not stabilize itself until the American jobs took their standards down to match these countries like Mexico or China or whatever. He's like, until you get to that point, you're going to have, in his words, a giant sucking sound going south. And we did. Okay. Let's see. Joe Hickey, if the problem I have with asserting Assad as a brutal dictator is that manufacturers consent for regime change, did you ever hear about Assad before ISIS? Be honest with you, when ISIS first came around, I mean, I was still in high school, so I didn't really hear about many of them. Just full disclosure. I was still in high school. I was busy at that point with a bad time in my life, screwing ex-girlfriends and taking pills. So I didn't follow a lot of shit. So full disclosure. Edwin Medina. What would be the alternative, Charles? It's Assad or the head chopper. Look, so don't conflate what I'm saying here, guys. I'm not saying I want the radicals to come in and take Assad's place. I'm not saying that. I'll put it to you this way. I don't like Saddam Hussein. I would have rather fucking still had Saddam Hussein in Iraq than what the fuck happened when we came there and fucked the shit up and gave them their freedom. Or what about Libya? Like, sure, Gaddafi, not a great guy. They got slave trades when he was dead. So don't take when I say I don't think he's a great. You can say, I don't think someone's a fucking stand-up wonderful hero. You can say that and not be saying, I want the fucking 42nd Airborne to go in there and blow a big hole in his ass. You can say that without advocating for regime change. And that's what I'm doing. I don't want to see boots on the ground in those countries. But I'm just also saying you shouldn't go to the extreme by saying, well, he's got to be a great guy to say that point. You could say, I don't think he's a great guy, but I also don't think we should be involved. If they want to change, let them do something about it. Same thing in Cuba. Same thing that Kennedy said for Vietnam. That's my take. So I don't think that it's fair to say if you criticize Assad, then you've got to be for regime change. No, I criticize Saddam Hussein, but I'd rather he had stayed because he kept a lot of those terrorist factions, just like it seems to be in Assad's case, where he's trying to keep a lot of the jihadists out of Syria, per se. Same thing with Saddam Hussein. Before we went over there to try to blow a big hole in his ass, he was keeping people like Al-Qaeda out. And then we go over there and what the fuck happened? So, yeah. Anthony Reyes. I don't think Charles is asking for regime change, I guess is what you're trying to say. Just questions the over-adulation for Assad. Yeah, absolutely. That's where I'm at on that. Joe Hickey, the appropriate place for questions is the UN or international courts, not regime change, boots on the ground, or no-fly zones. Yeah, I agree. And I don't think it should just be up to the United States to figure out who the fuck needs freedom and liberation. No, it should be an international discussion if something gets to that fucking point. Let's see. Ronwell Nagels. I know this isn't related, but looks like that Jim is So for those of you who didn't watch my last live stream, this motherfucking wonderful guitar player over here on my wall decided right at the end of the show he had to take a trip some fucking where and just hopped off my fucking wall. Jimmy decided he had heard enough of the show. He's like, if you're not fucking in this show, I'm going somewhere. I was right at ending the fucking end stream, and Jimmy just decides he's got to go take a fucking stroll somewhere and smoke a little weed, I guess. Yeah, he's back. He's back today. He's back today. And you ain't fucking coming off the wall again. Let's see. Thomas, Oklahoma. Columbus thought that he was in India. That's why some still call me an Indian. A lot of people do that shit. Yeah, I mean, Native American is the proper term, but unfortunately, a lot of people still do that shit. So, Anthony Reyes, with Holly Horn. I guess y'all are having some trouble there. So sorry about that, guys. I mean, hopefully y'all can work it out amongst each other. But Joe Hickey. Transhumanism and eugenics is one hell of a topic, dude. What the? I guess so. Let's see. Shadowban refugee. Dog, where are these people coming from? Propaganda Live. I don't necessarily support Assad's politics, but calling him a dictator is just hypocritical. When we don't call many other nations that we're allied with dictatorships. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that, but the difference is I wouldn't hesitate to call all these people dictatorships. I mean, I genuinely would not. And that's kind of my whole point is like, why do we keep this embargo on fucking Cuba? We trade with other countries. It's just because they have such much, they have such a much more powerful economy, like China. But like, when is Xi Jinping gonna leave office? Are we gonna fucking embargo his ass next? You bet your ass we're not about to embargo China. Ha! Oh shit! Could you imagine? Could you fucking imagine if we embargoed China? What the fuck would happen? Oh man, talk about some shit hitting the fan. Oh man, let's see. Joe Hickey, a speedboat. Oh shit, it just jumped again. I'm way behind on these chats. Y'all are blowing me up today. Joe Hickey, a speed bump. Wow, how many deaths does that mean then? It's a fucked up way of looking at it, but it's true, isn't it? What the fuck are the speed bumps going to be? Bodies stacked 2 feet high? It's fucked up. It's fucked up, but it's true. And that's why I said, no, somebody goes into that, you're losing me, dude. There's going to be bodies that are going to pile up too if they have their own revolution, but at least it's their own revolution. And guess what? That's what they had the last time too. You forget the Cuban people took their country back once before through Castro. They say they couldn't do it again if they wanted. I'd like to see that happen first, or at least the effort. Let's see. Propaganda Live. Canada's construction companies dug up 100 native children, and they have found hundreds more in other schoolyards around the country where the Catholic Church would kill children that didn't listen. Oh, shit. The school killings happened until the 90s. What the fuck? Surprisingly enough, I had Stacy for Truth on. We had a little kind of off-camera talk about some stuff with the Catholic Church. I'm just going to leave that at that for right now because I'm on a live stream. USA, this is Joe Hickey. USA sat on Syrian oil fields and wheat, starving the people. We are doing that plus Caesar sanctions. I don't know what a Caesar sanction is, but yeah, I mean that the U.S. plays dirty with shit like that. There's no doubt about that. Joe Hickey, standard of living was at its best in the UK during the 60s and has been falling ever since. Thomas, Oklahoma, Lone Wolf Podcast. How about let countries create their own trade agreements that includes worker rights and business trade? One country shouldn't dictate world trade. I'm not saying for one country to dictate world trade, but we have to make our agreement for what's fair to our own American jobs and our own fucking countries. Like, to just, for the sake of having free trade, make a free trade with a country whose standard of work and standard of living and income level is so far below ours that the workers are literally in poverty and working in sweatshop conditions. It's competition. They're making a product, we're making a product. And that product they're making can be turned out at a much higher volume, at much less cost because of the shittier working conditions. And our product cannot compete at that fucking cost because of all the extra stuff that's put into making our product. So if you put them at the same fucking level and you don't do anything to this product to bring its price back up to match it, so that at least when people go to the store, they said, well, I could buy American or I could buy Vietnamese and or made in China or made in Mexico, and it's all going to be basically the same damn price. Might as well buy American. When they started doing away with that shit, is when a lot of American jobs and American manufacturing said, yep, time to get on the cash cow. And they shipped out and they went overseas. And they've been doing it ever since. And a lot of the manufacturing who's still here, why are they still here? Because they got DOD contracts and they make shit for the fucking military. I don't find that to be coincidental one bit. Anthony Reyes, would you call NAFTA globalism? Yeah, I think I probably would. I don't think it was good for the United States. I don't think it was good for the middle class. As Ross Perot said, it caused a lot of good American jobs. Like, look, people weren't going to work and coming home and buying the Taj Mahal for a house with some of these jobs. But speaking from what I saw right here in the South died because of a lot of this shit. You had prominent cotton mills or textile mills, and it wasn't great work, but people were able to live in homes called mill hills. You could damn near walk to work at the mill, and then these mills just started closing up, and outsourcing their jobs. And these people really had no alternative to turn to. And that was because of fucking lousy trade agreements. Let's see, scroll through a few here. Let's see, Joe Hickey. This is a great debate. Geopolitics is one of my favorite subjects. Yeah, and that's something that I want to start doing with these segments. I wanted to start having, more interaction with the with the viewers here and get this sort of takes on some stuff and hear from you guys and kind of exchange ideas back and forth here with these segments. Let's see. Thomas, Oklahoma. Propaganda Live. Yep, the same here in the USA. If they look for graves, they'll find them here too. Oh, I'm sure. Especially you come down here to the South. Well, you might or might not find graves. They got swamps in the South. Some of these old redneck boys, when they want to get the job done, they know how to get rid of you. Won't find much left. Especially you get down to something like the Florida Everglades. Let's see. Joe Hickey. Yeah, also love me some Hendrix. Absolutely. Which I have a broad taste of music anyway. Like, I can listen as far as rock. We'll just stick with something along the lines of rock, right? Like, I could be listening to some shit like Five Finger Death Punch, Metallica, Slipknot, Korn, even fucking like Motionless in White from time to time. I mean, that's on like the newer end of stuff, right? And two of my favorites, because I love Chad Gray's stuff, Mudvayne and Hell Yeah. I could be listening to that one day, and then the very next day I could be listening to shit like Leonard. Because over here, I don't know if many people know who this is or not. the original lead singer of Lynyrd Skynyrd, Ronnie Van Zant. So I could be listening to Lynyrd Skynyrd one day, and then Marshall Tucker and Bob Dylan, the Allman Brothers, Jimi Hendrix, Pink Floyd. I could be listening to that shit an entirely different day. And then I could even take it as far back and be listening to some shit like fucking Jerry Lee Lewis and Chuck Berry. I go all over the place in terms of music. And that's just sticking with something along the lines of rock and roll into the metal world. I could be listening to fucking Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson one day. I could be listening to Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings another day. I could be listening to fucking, NWA and Ice Cube, Tupac one day. And then I could be just easily turning around and listening to Alan Jackson and George Strait another day. So I'm kind of all over the place. But rap, I would say, is probably the one I listen to the least. And I really don't listen to much new rap, just because at least I think with old rap, the lyrics were a little bit better. Like, I think Eminem did a lot of great stuff. And others too. But I think new rap, I think it's a lot like new country. I think it's lyrical garbage half the time. I just think there's I'm a person who enjoys sound, but I also enjoy lyrics and meanings to songs. And I just don't find good, deep meaning in a lot of modern music. So, let's see. Thomas, Oklahoma. The ghost of Jimi Hendrix haunting Charles. I got a lot of spirits in my house, but I don't think it's ghosts. I think they just reside in these bottles over here. Joe Hickey, imagine if China went on strike. Good God, wouldn't that fucking be something to see? Anthony Reyes, we need a universal wage, Charles, but no one wants to have that conversation. Well, I mean, yeah, you would think, but the only problem with that is you really would have to get the economies up to the same par to be able to handle it. And how are you going to impose that at the world level? I mean, that's kind of infringing upon their whole sovereignty, right? Like, you're telling them how they have to pay their people. I mean, so I'm all for just staying out. And when you negotiate trade deals, make sure they're fair to you. Like, what the fuck you going to make a trade for where you're getting your ass handed to you trade wise? I just don't think that's very good policy there. So, let's see. Joe Hickey, wrap it up on this one. What do you guys and gals think about the worker co-ops where employees' wages were linked to productivity? CEO wage held at 100 times the lowest worker's wage. I think it's a prime example of what I heard a lot when I was growing up. The poor get poorer and the rich get richer. And that's exactly why I was saying standard of living was better off back in the 90s and even the 80s and even further back than there. People thought they had it bad back then, and they just didn't realize it was still way fucking better than they got it today financially. I mean, it's shit today. People could still afford a car and a house, and now you can't do that shit unless you're real fucking lucky or you're working multiple jobs or you landed in a good career somehow or another. People are losing their houses, people are losing their vehicles, and then they can't get to work. I mean, it's a pretty fucked up mess. It really is. So, yeah, the poor get poorer and the rich get richer, and that's what I take away from it. So I hope you've enjoyed this. It's been a good discussion here again today. If you like it, definitely hit that like button, smash that like button, and drop your comments in the comment box below. Let me know what you think. I'm going to keep trying to do these every week. Love to hear feedback from the crowd. Not sure what we're going to do on next week, but hopefully we will do another one of these. Like I said, I want to try to turn this into a weekly thing. So again, if you like it, smash the like button, comment, share the video around. We'll see you next time on the Lone Wolf Podcast. Y'all take care, everyone.